What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the Small Lake City podcast. I'm your host, Eric Nilsson. As you all know, we are right in the middle of winter, kicking off this new year in January. Hope everybody has had a great holiday. Hope everybody had a great New Year's Eve and ready to rock 2024. So anyone that's grown up in Salt Lake or lived in Salt Lake long enough knows that it's a very active community, and it's usually based around a couple of hobbies that everybody likes to do. Two of those main ones include snow skiing and trail running. So for our guest this week, we have Julian Carr, a Salt Lake City native that is not only a professional skier that loves to throw himself off of 150 plus foot cliffs, but also an entrepreneur that has started multiple companies and has even helped build the trail running community here in Salt Lake with his most recent venture, the Cirque Trail Running series that started as some trail runs, competitions in the Wasatch Front, but is now scaled internationally, that he built from the ground up and used a lot of the things that he learned from the skiing events he attended around the world to make it as cool of an event as possible, and really something that everybody was asking to have that didn't really exist yet. So let's listen to him growing up in Salt Lake, skateboarding around the city, how that played a strong foundation for his life, how he found skiing with his mother, and continues to still make Salt Lake a cool place to be. So let's hear from me and Julian's conversation. Enjoy. Okay, that should be better.
Cool.
Yeah, dude, stoked. Like, it's so funny because like when I was thinking of people who I want to have on the podcast, like I kind of did this whole mental exercise of like, okay, let's deduce Salt Lake down to a couple activities, couple themes. And I mean, if you think about like quote Salt Lake culture and the activities that come there inherently, it's like, okay, skiing, snowboarding, obviously, but then anybody who's like a true Salt Lake citizen, it's like, oh, do you road bike, mountain bike, trail run, road run? Like those are always the core. And as I was thinking about how do I think about trail running, I was like, oh my God, Julian Carr is the perfect guy. I mean, he's
two birds with one stone.
Exactly. And I mean, like Justin being someone I've known for a better part of 10 years.
Yeah.
And so reached out to him. I was like, hey, do you think Julian would be open to something like this? He's like, one sec. Text me back 5 minutes. He's like, yeah, he's open to it. So,
yeah, great.
So thanks so much for coming out, man. I'm excited to sit down and hear your story. I mean, I have someone who's like, I remember I met you at the good old Sigma Chi basement once upon a time. And I mean, that was like in the heydays of Discreet. Everybody wanted a beanie. Everybody made sure they had a sweatshirt. And it's been so fun to kind of, I mean, follow along from there and see how, I mean, that's turned into, I mean, trail running and the Cirque series you've been created and everything that's been going on. And it's been so fun. So really just want to kind of, I mean, hear from the beginning to the end and
cool.
And understand it all.
Yeah, man.
Because I know, I mean, Salt Lake City native, I mean, what part of the valley did you grow up in, or what was childhood like for you?
I was born and grew up in the same house in the Avenues on 120 L Street.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I grew up just on like North Cliff Drive up on.
Cool.
Yeah. So
I had, you know, I lived in that home until I was 19.
Nice.
So I got to know pretty much every little crack in the sidewalk from skateboarding and you know, biking to friends' houses that were up on 18th Ave and North Cliff and everything, you know, east of Virginia Street. But it definitely was a cool neighborhood to grow up in. It was, you know, a pretty eclectic culture in the Avenues. And I think it probably still is, you know, and that's unique considering that there's a lot of mono culture in Salt Lake. So that was very cool to be raised in a place that there were a lot of diversity and a lot of different backgrounds. And just the history of all the homes were fascinating. So it was definitely a very cool neighborhood. I feel very fortunate to have grown up in.
Yeah. I mean, I think you hit it on the head. Like I consider myself very much like more of a Salt Lake citizen than like a Utahn. Just like me by culture, by personality, like I identify with it so much. You start going to north, south, east, or west, and I don't find my people quite as much. And like even more so in the Avenues and kind of like, I mean, Liberty Park area, where you do see a lot of that diversity. You do see that different cultures coming together instead of kind of like that monocultural being that Salt Lake or Utah can kind of be categorized into. And so like, that's why I've always enjoyed that area. Glad I grew up in that area. Because even those friends, I mean, I actually bumped into some of them this past weekend at a Christmas party I went to. And it's like, they're still like compared to like other kind of like quote groups of friends, like the most diverse, culturally different, and just like different people in general, where other people can kind of be like, let's call it bucketed a little bit more.
Yeah. I think Salt Lake, proper is really has amazing culture. And the way it boils down for me is the outdoors. And when there's so many fun things to do in Utah, you can rattle them off, like the mountain biking, skiing, climbing, and on. There's going to be a lot of cool people, so to have that kind of vibrant outdoor culture is pretty easy to find once you start doing any of those sports. But then you have this vibrant metropolitan city. So there's this whole different majority of people in this town. And to have that world class of outdoor at your fingertips with the mix of what the diversity brings from a metropolitan city is super unique. So it's like this big melting pot of whatever you're into, you're going to find that culture here if it's the outdoors. But then you have this big city with proximity to what you want to do, which is hard to beat. There's no place like it.
Totally. And it's like Salt Lake is culturally a very community-driven place. Again, coming back to the monoculture that tends to preside pretty strongly. But however, because of that strong culture that starts it, there's a ton of subcultures, there's like a group for everyone. And especially like with the outdoors culture, again, like good people do good things in my opinion. And people who spend a lot of time outside, I would argue, are the happiest and best people to be around. And those people, especially people that move here from out of state, bring this whole new energy to it of like, oh, I'm so excited to be here. You want to be here too? Like, oh my God, where people, and like, I'll throw myself into this camp. I mean, born and raised here, sometimes I get so desensitized to it because it's been here for so long that I do appreciate those people to bring that energy and are also so willing to like create a community around them. But I mean, I guess like in your early childhood, I mean, what was some of those early memories of being exposed to the outdoors? Was it pretty common for you and your family to spend time outside, or how was that for you?
Yeah. I mean, camping was a big part of my whole childhood, going on big hikes. I was mountain biking, camping in the Uintas. We go down to southern Utah all the time. And I didn't start skiing until 8th grade. So my whole childhood, I was playing lots of team sports, and lots of skateboarding. And so, I mentioned all the cracks and all the sidewalks and the avenues. I got to know all of them because they became all my ollie obstacles to get from point A to point B as, a 12-year-old. And I covered some serious distance. And then as I, got into 7th and 8th grade, I was skateboarding, to downtown almost daily or up at the University of Utah. And it was really interesting because it was a really vibrant skate scene back then.
Totally.
And down the Federal Building, like on Saturday nights, when cruising was a thing. So skateboarding in Salt Lake City, like downtown, I got a really cool experience in that regard. Because even though I identify as an outdoors guy, like that core urban Salt Lake edge that Salt Lake, I think still has, but back then was a little more nitty gritty. So I'm proud of that too, because I don't just rep Salt Lake from the mountain perspective. Like I really know the city, and I really appreciate the urbanized kind of offerings that it has too.
Yeah, I'm kind of in a similar bucket so I actually grew up rollerblading from like one of my earliest best friends, and when I was in 10 years old, he got me introduced to it, and it was just always kind of like my way to escape. And then kind of, again, found this like rollerblading community, and it was funny because like spring, summer, fall, I'd be downtown trying to find some spots, trying to like going and waxing, getting a ledge ready, going and bombing hills spending so much time in like the places in Salt Lake downtown that no one ever did. Like it'd be in the back of like industrial warehouses, finding this cool angle iron ledge and having fun.
Exactly then.
Exactly. It's like, but you gain this such like deep appreciation because you're spending time in the nooks and crannies, digging through things, usually with like your best friends.
Yeah. And just passing through, you get to know all the little corner stores and grocery stores, and, it's like anywhere you live, if you go on walks in that neighborhood, you just see things that you don't notice if you're driving. So yeah, when you go at that pace of a rollerblade or skate, it's just cool. You really get intimate with whatever urban landscape you're in. Yeah.
And to your point, it's like Salt Lake's such a cool metropolitan area. And then obviously you have the mountains, but to fall in love with both, you're like, what like, why would I go or do anything else?
Totally. And that was, I didn't realize how just world-class the mountains were really. My whole childhood, my dad would always say, son, look at those mountains. Like it's incredible, And so I knew they were beautiful, my dad definitely loved nature. I love nature. We'd go on big hikes and we'd camp all the time. And then as I tried skiing in 8th grade and got into it and,
how did you get into it? Was it like a certain friend that invited you, or it's just such?
No, actually.
I'm always so curious of the people who get introduced to it later.
Well, what's funny is, skiing and snowboarding wasn't on my radar. I was diehard skateboarder and way into basketball, football, and soccer. It was like my stuff. And my dad's a pretty sick musician, and he even had instruments around all the time. My whole childhood, I was around musicians and gigs.
What a fun environment.
Yeah. And I picked up a few instruments, tried them a little bit, and he's like, you were always way more interested in sports, He's like, so I obviously wanted you to check out, being a musician, and you did, but you were very much more interested in all this in sports. And my dad had a deal that, like, in high school, if I was on an athletics team, he'd like pay my car payment and stuff like that. So he just understood that being a part of an athletic team passes down lots of great life lessons and sense of responsibility and accomplishment and all that stuff. So it was cool. My dad saw the value in being in nature and the value of like team sports, and didn't like pressure me into being a musician because that's his thing.
Sounds like a good dad overall.
He's a cool dad. Yeah, my mom is too. Shout out. So 5th grade, somehow we were like, let's go snowboard. So me and my buddy that I skated with a lot, we found out from Salty Peaks when it used to be down on, I think 23rd East before they moved up to like 30th East, but like tiny little store, but they had like rentals and a day pass to Brighton for like, $20. And so we got them, and the only way we could get up there, we had a deal. My friend's mom would give us a ride up, then my mom would pick us up.
Classic.
And we had to get dropped off at 9 a.m. Our lessons weren't until 11 a.m. And of course, we promised our parents we wouldn't take a run until the lesson. And of course, that didn't happen. And first run, I'm just going fast. And I'm used to going fast on my skateboard. And I just, took a really good crash, and I was going real fast, and I just thought I was going to nail it, And anyway, I sprained my knee really bad. So I had like crutches. I went to Wasatch Elementary in the Avenues. I had an elevator key, so I was like pretty cool.
Nice
elevator key. But my mom skied. My dad didn't. My mom did, and she kept telling me after 5th grade that I needed to come ski with her because she'd go ski with her girlfriends every weekend. And I was always like, I don't know, Mom. Like, I'm good, And then finally I was like, okay, Mom, I'll go ski. Let's go. So I went up with her, and, first time taking the chairlift up, I'm just looking at a Majestic chair at Brighton, and I'm watching people's body mechanics, and, it made sense to me. I was like, I understand how this sport is, how to do that. But I just knew it. I just saw it. I felt it.
First chairlift up.
Yeah, I saw it. I was like, I got it.
This is fine.
Yeah. And so by the end of that first day, I got pulled over by ski patrol for going too fast because it just made sense. It clicked. And so I fell in love with skiing that first day. And it's so weird because if I wouldn't have gotten hurt snowboarding in 5th grade, I would have never touched skis. I know it. So it's just such a strange thing when you look back at certain things in life that you thought was a really bad thing that leads directly to like awesome stuff that's a big part of you. So, I think that happens a lot in life, and it's about what kind of approach and mentality you can have towards things and events and circumstances in your life that might be what seems negative or positive. It's like, you never know how the dots are going to connect. So I was so grateful that my mom talked to me. I'm so grateful that I hurt my knee snowboarding that day because I absolutely just love skiing.
Yeah. It's like from all that I know of you, to like just take out the function of skiing from it all, and it all just like almost seems like it would crumble because it's such like the platform of everything that built onto it. And I totally agree. Like it's so funny when you have all these like minor events happen, a lot of them setbacks. You're like, what the hell's going on? Like, everything's not working. And then all of a sudden you get to this point, and this vantage point, you're like, oh, it all did work out. And even like, and it's just so funny to get to that point where you can look back and see the whole path and how everything worked together, and how this huge door that closed that you stared at for so long, there's actually this like small door that opened behind you that you didn't even know is going to lead to this huge path in life.
Totally. And that's people. Like, some people come into your life that you look back and you're like, oh, wow, that's so interesting that all these opportunities that came was just from, knowing this one person that maybe wasn't even a big part of my life or isn't even that good of a friend. And now they are or something, it's like so weird to trace all the steps back. So I always try to be as open as possible to anyone that comes across my path, in a way to just see if anything organically is going to build off that,
Yeah, actually, it's actually funny you say that. I finished a book today that I was actually listening to on the way here. It's Arnold Schwarzenegger's book called Be Useful, and it's based on the premise. I think it was at a Stanford graduation. He gave these like 7 steps to success. And I remember listening to it when I was doing summer sales, and it was like one of those super cheesy, like pump up sales things. But in the back of my head, I was like, wait, this is actually like really good advice. And so I kind of always go back to it every now and then when I just need a reminder of what's going on moving forward. And I love part of it. He's like, everybody always calls me a self-made man. And we're not doing that. And he's like, people call me this self-made man. And I hate that because everything that I've done in my life, there's always been people next to me, people supporting me, people helping me build. So the thought of me saying I did this on my own is insulting to all of those people. And like everything in my life, like there's not a single thing I can look at that's been good to me and be like, well, that was all me, like no one else, like I'll take the trophy. And even then, like who would want to do anything without anybody anyway? Like people are what make life so great.
Yeah, it's a great point. I'm going to look up Arnold's 6 other pointers. That's a good one.
They're solid. Okay. And so now I'm curious. So you go skiing with your mom, and I just love that I know there's a line that needs to be drawn between going skiing with your mom and her friends and doing front flips over 100 plus cliffs. So how did that transpire? I mean, like walk me through that process.
Well, I should mention my whole childhood with the team sports and skateboarding. I was always doing gymnastics, and we'd always go up to the University of Utah and have access to the gymnastics facility. Mm-hmm. I would take classes and was a part of a club my whole childhood. And so I was always jumping in the foam pit. I hardly ever like stuck to any routines or really learning any of the disciplines that well because I was always in the foam pit, just jumping in the foam pit as much as I could, getting in trouble, going in the foam pit. That's all I wanted to do was go in the foam pit. I just love flying through the air. I had a trampoline in my backyard. I lived on that thing. In the summertime, I don't ever think I slept inside my house. I'd always have sleepovers with my buddies on the tramp.
So fun.
And so I just love being in the air. I've always loved that as a kid. I had a roof jumping club when I was in like kindergarten, first grade. We'd just get our little pack of friends and go find like a shed to jump off into bushes, just like full like Bam Margera style back in the day, you know? And so I started skiing with my mom, here we are in Utah, best snow on planet Earth for light, deep, like miracle, like deepness. And so I just started skiing and fell in love with it and skied through powder. And once I really felt like what that was like, my perspective totally shifted. I was like, okay, I already loved the mechanics of the sport. I already loved cruising around on planet Earth with these 2 sticks on with no engine going really fast. Like I love this sport already. But now that I know what powder is like, this entire domain, all of the outdoors with snow on it is a foam pit.
Yeah. It's almost like changes from like a gymnasium to a pool because you're like, oh, I can jump into this and I'm going to
that's exactly what it was. It's just gymnasium mentality, foam pit mentality. So I was just trying to find jumps and cliffs. Like that's all I wanted to do. Just jumps, cliffs. And got my first 3 season passes, 9th, 10th, 11th grade at Solitude, Utah, and hit like every jump and 5 or 10 foot cliff possible on that entire mountain. Yeah. And senior year in high school, got a pass to the Bird. And that was awesome because there's a lot more,
a lot bigger cliffs
terrain.
There. Yeah.
And then all through college, I got way into snowbird even more. And then I transferred to like Alta and then started doing lots of backcountry and then just started traveling the world, obviously. But I think, like I said, skiing is there's no other sport without use of a motor that you go as fast. And then you're in nature that you could just see photos of and it would be stunning. You could make a calendar out of it. Yeah. And then you're with usually good friends or family. So it just anyone that skis a lot or snowboards a lot knows it's such a soul fulfilling. You just feel so whole. It's such a rich experience, you know. It's a fun sport. There's the risk factor. It's dangerous, you know, and then nature and friends. It's just in any speed, any place. It's such a miracle too, because snow is so nuts.
Yeah.
And the fact that you get to cruise around in it is just unworldly. It's so bizarre.
Exactly. And I love those activities because totally agree with skiing and being this experience where people outside, there can be a competitive nature to it, but like a shared dopamine giving experience, like those are like the best times in life. Like, I mean, what I get in this winter skiing, but then like when I golf in the summer, like same sort of thing. And it's so funny to like back into that and be like, well, why do I like this? You're like, well, it provides everything that I like. And then, I mean, you throw in like traveling the world with friends and all of a sudden you're on the other side of the world in a yurt about to go hop in a helicopter to go to the top of this place, to go jump off a 150-foot cliff. Like, it's so crazy to think it all just kind of builds upon itself and you find yourself in these moments.
Yeah, it's pretty spectacular. And, you know, like I said, it's a dangerous sport, but you baby step your comfort zones just, you know, a little bigger and bigger. The more you apply yourself, the more you're, you know, dedicated to whatever craft you're into. There's going to obviously be lessons to be learned along the path, but you know, that comfort level grows no matter what you're interested in, you know?
Totally.
So that's kind of how my career has just been a slow, gradual expansion of comfort zone in the mountains.
Yeah. Just I always feel bad for people, like, cause like, you know, the people that are like, oh, I can't do this, I'm scared. Like, I don't want to ski, don't want to go down this run, don't need to, like, I always feel kind of like bad for those people. Cause I'm like an adrenaline junkie too. Like, I love doing that. And I'm like, how much of life you're not experiencing by like being able to feel this blood pumping through your veins.
Well, I think it's just fear is a tricky thing, you know, like fear is such a mechanism that humans and all animals have built into them that really saves your ass.
Yeah, survival mechanism.
Yeah, it's just so weird to stare at the survival mechanism in the face and feel the fear, know it's scary, and then just dissect it and take it apart and look at what it's made of, you know? And then sometimes it makes sense. And you're like, oh yeah, that is scary. I'm out of here. But other times you take it apart and look at it and you're like, well, yes, there are some scary things about this, but sprinkle in my experience, you know, abilities, snow quality, snow angle, you know, all of a sudden it makes sense and it's confidence. And you're just like, wow, I thought through that because I'm scared. And now that genuine fear turned into confidence because I took it apart. I sat with it. I didn't just sidestep it. I didn't like bang my chest and just send it. You know what I mean? It was like, I really took it apart. And that's, as a human, it's a weird exercise. Yeah. It's really intense. And sometimes it was for a reason, but other times you can kind of just get through the fear and use it. And it's super powerful.
Totally. I mean, what were some of the favorite places you went to or favorite moments that you had, I mean, skiing?
I mean, anywhere, anytime, man. It's just, I've gotten to, I always remember the first time I ever skied Whistler. We got there and it was like 5 p.m. and we were trying to get there by noon so that we could ski half the day because I was just so excited to get there. And the only lift that was spinning at 5 o'clock was the kids' chairlift until 7 p.m. So I was with like, you know, other sponsored pro skier guys and photographers and all that. And I just automatically was digging into my luggage to get my ski clothes out and to go rip it. And they were kind of realizing what was going on. And I was just surprised they weren't as fired up as me to go do that.
It's right there. Let's do it.
So the photographer is the only guy that came with me and we had a blast. We just throttled down and, you know, made these funny little courses and features to go around. And like, it was just so much fun. And it's just so childlike and just so interesting that we could be in a point in a sport where that expansion zone, that ability level has gotten so high that, yeah, I'm not a white belt anymore. I'm a black belt, right? So it's just so weird that you can go back to the routine of a white belt stepping stones and still have as much enjoyment as possible. I think that's unique in skiing, or at least my enjoyment of skiing, that is.
And it like also shows you're just like complete love for it, being like, yeah, it's a bunny hill at 5 p.m. and I'm so excited that I still want to go do it.
All about it.
Everyone's like, oh yeah, cool. We're going to go to the bar. We're going to go do something else. Like, have fun.
Yeah. No, it's great. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to travel, all over South America and Japan and Alaska, lots of places in the Alps, Iceland, Norway. And, really though, traveling is so fun. You're always with an interesting group of people either you know really well or they're strangers because you just got plugged in on a production.
Or you're about to get to know them pretty well.
Yeah, and then they become, best friends for life, like literally. And I can say, though, with full confidence, it doesn't get better than a sunny 30-inch day at Alta. Like it's the world's best. It's not just a slogan on the license plate,
Drop off Wildcat, go drop into Catherine's.
Exactly.
Few things better than that.
Exactly.
And so I know, skiing kind of became this launch pad for you, because I know your first entrepreneurial effort was Discreet, unless there's something else in between there. But how did that come to be, or how did that start?
Discreet came around when I was in college. It's right when I was really applying myself to crack I want to be sponsored, be a pro skier. And things were starting to come together for me as a skier. And at the time, there were some of the most iconic guys in skiing that I'd been, just watching every ski video and reading every powder magazine, free skier, all that stuff. Some of the biggest names that I've been seeing for 5-6 years were, quote unquote, getting older. And a lot of them were getting dropped by their sponsors. And we're talking like top name dudes. And I was like, wow, note to self, no matter how well this whole ski career path goes, there's a major, there's like a shelf, like you're going to expire on the shelf. Right. Yeah. And so I was like, I should have something else that I can build as I build my ski career which is
such a good mentality, a observation to have in your early 20s that I don't think most people would have.
Yeah, I definitely feel fortunate. It was just kind of this, I've always been interested in marketing and branding ever since I was a little kid, and just, I guess, business in general. And so those ideas came to me naturally. And once I saw that, it kind of I'd already had it in the back of my mind of starting a brand or something for a few years, but that really was no, you really should, because you need to build something. So by the time you have to hang it up as a professional athlete, you'll have something else going on that can be bringing you income, because you don't want to trip up on your next phase in life. Because a lot of these guys were, doing yard keeping or washing windows or going back to school or being bitter at the bar. And it's not like any of those paths, except for being bitter at the bar, is a bad thing. Sure. But they were tripping up a little bit, and I was like, wow, these are some of the most talented, big name dudes as far as professional skiing goes. And they're a little tripped up on their next move. And I was like, I don't want to be that guy,
Yeah. And so you create this brand. I mean, anyone who's in Salt Lake during that time, you saw Discreet everywhere. It was like that local homegrown brand that everybody liked to support. It was almost like the cool beanie before the cool beanies. Like it was the Carhartt beanie before the Carhartt beanie almost.
Yes. I'll be down with that. Yeah, I just was like, man, I was going to school full time at the University of Utah. I was, skiing daily, getting up for sunrise to go shoot. And I was working at a sports bar in downtown called the Skybox.
Oh, I forgot about the Sky. Wow.
Yeah, Gateway.
Memory just blew my mind.
No doubt. And so I was like, I have limited resources. What can I do here? I have $1,000 to my name. And I just started scouring, wholesale website stuff. And we're talking, this is 19 or maybe 2001 or something. So it's just a miracle. I found you could buy these 4-inch cuffed beanies from a wholesaler in Asia that had a distribution house in California. So it was still wholesale pricing, and they'd sell them in a dozen per color, and they were unbranded. And right away I was like, I could buy those, uncuff them. And just from skating, how baggy jeans were the style in the 90s, I was like, it'll be a baggy beanie. I'm like, because people will put their goggles on over them and kind of scrunch them down, and it'll just look like a baggy beanie. And I was like, that doesn't exist in the market, and that'll be super cool. I just saw it, just like how I saw how you can ski. I just saw that could be a cool thing. And so I bought $1,000 worth of these, a 4-inch cuff beanies that I stretched out. So they were basically 12-inch tall slouch beanies that we all know today.
Yeah.
And I put the embroidery on purpose right where the cuff would be. So when people got it, they knew like, oh, you wear it like that. You don't cuff it, like, because they came uncuffed, right? Yeah. But with the embroidery right there. So there was no like, oh, then I cuff it.
Yeah, I'll just cuff it now.
And it was funny because a bunch of my buddies understood the slouch, baggy, put your goggles on and make it look how I envisioned it. But then a ton of people just started rocking them like reservoir tip.
Yes.
And that became just a thing. And that particular beanie was called the Doinator. And backcountry.com put in like so many big orders for them. And then we just had, the whole country pretty much. We had like something crazy, like 120 stores across the U.S. were carrying us. And the whole anchor of the whole project was that Doinator beanie. And it was cool because 2 years later, Burton, Cole, Spacecraft, down the line, they all had one.
Yeah.
But, and I'm not going to say we started it, but I'd never seen it.
Yeah.
And, it was just fun to be someone that was a part of the ski community as a skier, and then to have this cool creative outlet and to have this product become part of the culture was like really interesting and fulfilling and challenging. The whole company was challenging because you had to be, it was creatively demanding from a product design standpoint, marketing, and you had to do it every year. Yeah. And then you had to plug into the, fundamentals of business, which are very dry and not fun, which is finding your reps, your supply chain, figuring out your accounting, and just how to run a business. Because the marketing and branding all came to me naturally. The product design came to me naturally. Supply chain, I kind of had to crack that code, and the rest of it, I had to figure it all out. And such a crash course in learning how to do business. And that, project lasted 14 years. I sold it in 2018. But
wow, I know it's 14 years. That's huge.
Yeah. The last 4 years of having Discrete, I fell in love with mountain running, like big time. And I was trying to find other races that were what Cirque Series are today.
So how did you get into, running and trail running?
Yeah. Well, I was usually mountain biking, or for I think 8 or 9 summers in a row, I went down to South America and skied Chile and Argentina for at least a month, sometimes 2.
Sounds tough. I'm sorry.
So my summers were skiing and mountain biking or wake surfing, and not that long because I'd go to South America. And so I ended up getting this dog. I wasn't planning on getting a dog, but this really cool dog came into my life, and I took her on a few mountain bike rides. And, she went 14, 15 miles, no problem. She was totally athletic little beast. But I was like, man, by the time she turns 4 or 5, she's going to be pretty beat up. Mm-hmm. And so I lived right by the trailhead to Mount Olympus.
Cool.
And so I started hiking up Mount Olympus. And, as anyone that's hiked Mount Olympus knows, it's a 4,000 vert hike in 5 miles. So it's an absolute ass kicker. And I started kind of doing that, and my buddies that did forest firefighting were like, hey, yo, the stream that's almost halfway up? Part of like a benchmark to be on our cruise, you have to be able to hike to that within 30 minutes. And I was like, oh, I'm boot packing and skinning and out all the time, in the mountains in the wintertime. And I was like, and I'm a pretty good mountain bike climber. I'm like, 30 minutes, whatever. So the next time I went, I was like, no problem. So I, hit start on the watch and just mobbed as fast as I could hiking, which redline hiking straight up a mountain, as anybody knows, is beyond exhausting. It's like one of the most exhausting things you can do as a human is beeline it up a mountain, especially one that's, 1,800 miles or 1,800 feet per mile. My benchmark for what's considered steep is if you gain 1,000 feet per mile. That's what I consider steep.
This is almost double that.
This is almost double. So I get to the stream 31 minutes. I'm so pissed. But it also completely motivated me because I got really addicted to chipping my time down.
Switch flips in your head.
I was like, I got to get this down. So I was going 4, 5, 6, sometimes every day. And that was from spring when I got my dog to the fall. Right before winter happened, I chipped my time down to 22:51.
Wow.
So I got way down there, better than any of my buddies on the fire crew even.
They're like offering you jobs.
Oh, yeah. And so, my dog was amped, I was amped, and I kind of invite people and they'd be like, I don't run. And I was like, it's not really running. Yeah. Like it is really gratifying red line experience of your complete fitness.
Yes.
Like, you know what you're made of when you go as fast as you can halfway up Mount Olympus or to the top. I'm like, you know exactly where your fitness is at. And I'd never felt better. Every fall, I would take my ski conditioning really seriously. And going into ski conditioning that year, I had better scores on our day one when you take your baseline number count on what you can do in each category. I was in better shape going into that ski conditioning than I'd ever been coming out of it.
Interesting.
So, when you run up a mountain day after day after day, and coming down is so steep that your agility has to be so
especially when your legs are already tired and then your quad starts seizing. Oh, it's brutal.
But you just develop it. And so anyway, the whole winter goes by. I'm skiing all the time, but you know how the bench here, even in midwinter,
you can always get a shoreline.
You can always go up to Grandeur or halfway up Olympus or whatever. I mean, there's tons of guys that still mob to the top, no matter if it's deep. But I was still hiking Olympus. I was still loving it. And the next spring comes around, and my buddy's wife, my buddy Parker's, his wife Kate, was like, "Hey, we're going to go do this trail run race down in Moab. You should come because we see you're always trail running." And I'm like, "Is there any elevation gain?" She's like, "Not really, it's Moab." And I was like, well, I'm probably good.
Not my thing.
I'm not really a runner. She's like, "Well, I already signed you up. So just come, we're going to camp and have fun." And I'm like, "All right, let's go." So me and Parker stay up way too late, having a couple beers around the campfire. We get up, shake it off, get to the race by like 7 a.m. I'm looking around, get my bib and all that. It's like $80. There's 300 or 400 people there. Lots of young, vibrant people, and we do the race. It's super beautiful. It's just like stunning. And I get second place. So I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Like I got like a whole side hustle I can do now in the summers that I can combine with my skiing. And I was just looking around this event though. There was no production value. Like they spent nothing on it.
Just super simple.
Just so simple. Great. But I was looking at all the people coming across the finish line, young, interesting people that wanted a reason to hang out, but there was no reason. We were like the only car that backed up, popped our tailgate, had a cooler full of beers, and we're like rooting people through the finish line. And I'm looking at these organizers, and I was like doing the math. I'm like, good for them. They just pocketed 30 grand pretty much, Yeah. I'm like, I don't know if many people are going to come back, but that was cool. And then I go up for my podium, and it's a $10 gift certificate to the local coffee shop. So I'm like, man, they missed the mark here. Yeah. I'm like, they needed to have some kind of production value here to have any kind of chance of this surviving. You know what I mean? I'm like, that's too bad. But it was just kind of back of my head. And then at the time I was a GoPro athlete, and they had the GoPro games in Vail, and they sent an email to all the athletes like, hey, come out and hang out. Like and if there's any events you want to do, let us know. But we want you guys just to come and chill. And so I went out there. I noticed they had a mountain run 15K. So I was like, sign me up for that. Yeah. And so I went totally thinking I was going to a podium, and this was just the opposite. The production value was off the charts, but the course design was they literally ran us out of the village up into the aspen trees in figure eights until we hit the 15K mark, and then brought us back across the finish line. There's no sense of destination, no sense of accomplishment, but the production value was amazing. And it's just kind of the back of my head. I was like, man, like another just missed the mark here, Oh, and I should mention this GoPro Mountain Games was part of like to qualify for the Team USA running team. for like the international mountain running circuit.
Oh,
they
interesting.
had points that you could accumulate from a bunch of events, and this was one of them. So I was in the start gate, and I was like kind of looking around. I'm like, damn, these dudes look fast, because they had like just super thin, like just all branded up and so in shape, and just
You can always spot them.
runner type. Oh, because their shorts are so short.
Short of the shorts, the short of the mine.
But I was still like, oh, I'm going to smoke these fools, right? So we take off, and the first big steep hill we go up, I'm just middle of the pack, and I was like, what is going on?
Like, I just took second.
I know. So I quickly learned what the difference was between, a backyard hero like me and world-class like mountain runners. They are freaks of nature. And it's so cool now to get to know a bunch of them through the Cirque series. But anyway, after those 2 races happened, I was like, well, I still am way into this. I want to find some more events that are more what I want, And my criteria was like Mount Olympus. Where's a race that's 6 miles that goes up 4,000 feet to a cool peak and back down, you know? And so I found all the ultra runs. I found all the Hard Rock 100s, the Western States, Wasatch 100, like there's the Leadville 100 and all the Speed Goat 50K.
Yeah. Like all the brutal ultra.
Yeah. Big, long mountain races that you have to be beyond elite in that category. And then I found the mud runs and the Spartans and the relay races and obstacle courses and, all the mom and pop 5Ks and 10Ks. And I was just like, this is so weird. There's not a single race that is my experience of what I think a lot of people would gravitate to, which is hiking Mount Olympus and back down in a fun atmosphere. I did the U.S. free skiing world tour for extreme skiing contests for a number of years, and they always curated this amazing environment with great music and great announcers, and it made it very much a spectator kind of hangout vibe to the events. So that was really ingrained in me from an event production standpoint. I actually interned with the company that produced those events in college as well. And so as I saw the vision for the Cirque series, I was like, man, I should just start a Wasatch Classics, and I'll do 3 races on Beacon Peak, Grandeur Peak, and Mount Olympus. Yeah. It's kind of in the back of my head. And after another year or 2, I was in Iceland on a really cool ski trip where we went way out in this fjord and stayed in this rundown farmhouse that was the only building around on this entire like chain of fjords and island. Like it was the only man-made structure out there. And this really cool company, you had to take a fishing vessel to the vicinity, and then they put you in a raft and you'd raft over to it. And then the fishing vessel would leave and go back to the town that was 4 hours away across this channel. So you'd be in this vast network of these fjords with this farmhouse. They updated, they restoed it to be, any hut you'd go to in Colorado or like a yurt or something. So it was like luxurious camping, but not a soul around. It was a crazy experience. And the last day we were there, we took the raft out, 30 minutes up, and saw this really cool couloir. So we hiked up this couloir. It was like 3,000 feet. I got up there first, and I was just kind of chilling, looking at the sunset on the Arctic Ocean. And I was like, man, I feel so good. I feel so awesome right now. I just had a great workout. I'm treated to this peak experience up here. This is such a core, like, I don't know what the right word is, but it's like primal, And I was like, this is so fulfilling. I feel so fulfilled as a human being. I'm going to start that race series. I was just like, I'm going to do it. So anyway, that was like late March. Okay. And that was 2015. So come August 2015 was our first race at Alta. Okay, we did Alta, Snowbird, Deer Valley, and Crested Butte that first summer. And then just grew from there. But it was cool because the vision I had from that, the first time I thought of doing it, which was it's going to be elite athletes mixed with first timers, with bros like me, and everything in between. And a big party, lots of cool brands, great announcers, total hangout, you know? And it's cool because now, fast forward to today, it is that. So it was just fun to grow something and step into an entire different industry, and just all the lessons I learned from how to run a business from discrete, and everything I'd learned as a producer in my ski career, and marketing and branding. I took all my skill set and just distilled it into Cirque Series, and I just knew exactly how to execute. Yeah. Whereas discrete was just a big experiment. I made tons of great choices, tons of bad decisions, and just took it all, and it was all just this valuable education. So when I did Cirque Series, I just knew exactly what I wanted and how to execute it. And it was really cool to see the vision come to life. And now, it's operating at a level that I always envisioned.
Yeah. Because now it's not only just in Salt Lake, but you guys have races in Alaska, Switzerland. Oh, I'm trying to think what else.
We do, Alaska, Switzerland, Grand Targhee, Wyoming, right next to the Tetons.
So pretty.
A base in Colorado, just like another pretty iconic, really rootsy, cool resort.
Yeah.
And that race goes up to 13,700 feet.
Wow. So
it's our highest race. And then, we have Snowbird, Alta, and Brighton here. Yeah. So 7 races total each season.
And I love that it, like, you learn from all these experiences in these races that you had where you're like, okay, like, pretty course, but like, where's the production? And then on the flip side, like, great production, but not a great course. And then you're like, well, I have these experiences and these events I would. What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the Small Lake City Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Nilsson. As you all know, we are right in the middle of winter, kicking off this new year in January. Hope everybody has had a great holiday. Hope everybody had a great New Year's Eve and ready to rock 2024. So anyone that's grown up in Salt Lake or lived in Salt Lake long enough knows that it's a very active community, and it's usually based around a couple of hobbies that everybody likes to do. 2 of those main ones include snow skiing and trail running. So for our guest this week, we have Julian Carr, a Salt Lake City native that is not only a professional skier that loves to throw himself off of 150 plus foot cliffs, but also an entrepreneur that has started multiple companies and has even helped build the trail running community here in Salt Lake with his most recent venture, the Cirque Trail Running series that started as some trail runs, competitions in the Wasatch Front, but is now scaled internationally, that he built from the ground up and used a lot of the things that he learned from the skiing events he attended around the world to make it as cool of an event as possible, and really something that everybody was asking to have that didn't really exist yet. So let's listen to him growing up in Salt Lake, skateboarding around the city, how that played a strong foundation for his life, how he found skiing with his mother, and continues to still make Salt Lake a cool place to be. So let's hear from me and Julian's conversation. Enjoy. Okay, that should be better.
Cool.
Yeah, dude, stoked. Like, it's so funny because, like, when I was thinking of people who I want to have on the podcast, like, I kind of did this whole mental exercise of like, okay, let's deduce Salt Lake down to a couple activities, couple themes. And I mean, if you think about, like, quote, Salt Lake culture and the activities that come there inherently, it's like, okay, skiing, snowboarding, obviously, but then anybody who's like a true Salt Lake citizen, it's like, oh, do you road bike, mountain bike, trail run, road run? Like, those are always the core. And as I was thinking about how do I think about trail running, I was like, oh my God, Julian Carr is the perfect guy. I mean, he's
2 birds with 1 stone.
Exactly. And I mean, like, Justin being someone I've known for a better part of 10 years. Yeah. And so reached out to him. I was like, hey, do you think Julian would be open to something like this? He's like, 1 sec. Text me back 5 minutes. He's like, yeah, he's open to it. So,
great.
So thanks so much for coming out, man. I'm excited to sit down and hear your story. I mean, I have someone who's like, I remember I met you at the good old Sigma Chi basement once upon a time. And I mean, that was like in the heydays of discrete. Everybody wanted a beanie. Everybody made sure they had a sweatshirt. And it's been so fun to kind of, I mean, follow along from there and see how, I mean, that's turned into, I mean, trail running and the Cirque series you've been created and everything that's been going on. And it's been so fun. So really just want to kind of, I mean, hear from the beginning to the end and
cool.
And understand it all.
Yeah, man.
Because I know, I mean, Salt Lake City native, I mean, what part of the valley did you grow up in, or what was childhood like for you?
I was born and grew up in the same house in the Avenues on 120 L Street.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I grew up just on like North Cliff Drive up on
cool.
Yeah. So
So I
similar
had,
place.
I lived in that home until I was 19.
Nice.
So I got to know pretty much every little crack in the sidewalk from skateboarding and biking to friends' houses that were up on 18th Ave and Northcliffe and everything, east of Virginia Street. But it definitely was a cool neighborhood to grow up in. It was, a pretty eclectic culture in the avenues. And I think it probably still is,
Totally.
and that's unique considering that there's a lot of mono culture in Salt Lake. So that was very cool to be raised in a place that there were a lot of diversity and a lot of different backgrounds. And just the history of all the homes were fascinating. So it was definitely a very cool neighborhood. I feel very fortunate to have grown up in.
Yeah. I mean, I think you hit it on the head. Like I consider myself very much like more of a Salt Lake citizen than like a Utah. Just like me by culture, by personality, like I identify with it so much. You start going to north, south, east, or west, and I don't find my people quite as much. And like even more so in the avenues and kind of like, Liberty Park area where you do see a lot of that diversity. You do see that different cultures coming together instead of kind of like that monocultural being that Salt Lake or Utah can kind of be categorized into. And so like, that's why I've always enjoyed that area. Glad I grew up in that area. Cause even those friends, I actually bumped into some of them this past weekend at a Christmas party I went to. And it's like, they're still like compared to like other kind of like quote groups of friends, like the most diverse, culturally different, and just like different people in general, where other people can kind of be like, let's call it bucketed a little bit more.
Yeah. I think Salt Lake, proper really has amazing culture. And the way it boils down for me is the outdoors. And when there's so many fun things to do in Utah, you can rattle them off, like the mountain biking, skiing, climbing, and on. There's going to be a lot of cool people, so to have that kind of vibrant outdoor culture is pretty easy to find once you start doing any of those sports. But then you have this vibrant metropolitan city. So there's this whole different majority of people in this town, and to have that world class of outdoor at your fingertips with the mix of what the diversity brings from a metropolitan city is super unique. So it's like this big melting pot of whatever you're into, you're going to find that culture here if it's the outdoors. But then you have this big city with proximity to what you want to do, which is hard to beat. There's no place like it.
Totally. And it's like Salt Lake is culturally a very community-driven place. Again, coming back to the monoculture that tends to preside pretty strongly. But however, because of that strong culture that starts it, there's a ton of subcultures, there's like a group for everyone. And especially like with the outdoors culture, again, like good people do good things in my opinion. And people who spend a lot of time outside, I would argue, are the happiest and best people to be around. And those people, especially people that move here from out of state, bring this whole new energy to it of like, oh, I'm so excited to be here. You want to be here too? Like, oh my God, where people, and like, I'll throw myself into this camp. Born and raised here, sometimes I get so desensitized to it because it's been here for so long that I do appreciate those people to bring that energy and are also so willing to like create a community around them. But I guess like in your early childhood, what was some of those early memories of being exposed to the outdoors? Was it pretty common for you and your family to spend time outside, or how was that for you?
Yeah. Camping was a big part of my whole childhood, going on big hikes. I was mountain biking, camping in the Uintas. We go down to southern Utah all the time. And I didn't start skiing until 8th grade. So my whole childhood, I was playing lots of team sports and lots of skateboarding. And so, I mentioned all the cracks and all the sidewalks and the avenues. I got to know all of them because they became all my ollie obstacles to get from point A to point B as, a 12-year-old. And I covered some serious distance. And then as I, got into 7th and 8th grade, I was skateboarding, to downtown almost daily or up at the University of Utah. And it was really interesting because it was a really vibrant skate scene back then.
Totally.
And down the Federal Building, like on Saturday nights, when cruising was a thing.